I'm going to call this meeting to order. Mayor Ethel.
Romo,
Present.
Thompson, Howard,
Here.
Ferris,
Yep.
Garcia.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all department heads that are here with us tonight, as well as those who are joining us online. This is the second discussion on the 2022 budget, and we've got a bunch of the information here. So without any further discussion, I'm going to hand the meeting over to Sheree. Sheree?
Okay, what you have in front of you is a compilation of a lot of work today. But we've had so many questions the last few days that I felt like it needed to be documented, so you guys had it to take with you, and you could look at it before Monday night, or as it is tonight. But I was asked to provide total expenses and revenues for 2021 and 2022, and making sure those matched up with what was in the book. So we did that. That's this report. But I want to make sure you understand this report.
This-
Yeah, no,
No.
the
Oh,
one
here it
with
is.
the
Here
blue.
it is, yeah.
The way governmental accounting is and the way the state reporting for budgeting is hard to match everything up. So I put a disclaimer in the documentation just saying to be aware that this doesn't reflect cash balance. So it looks like you're going in the hole and you're not. So just so everybody's clear on that. And then the second question I had was, what is the total health insurance cost annually? This is $982,254 is the 2022 budgeted amount through all budgets. So that's general fund, everything. However, again, this is the budget amount. Doesn't mean you're spending that, because you don't pay for vacancies. Some people may it may actually be a little higher than what you projected originally because people go from single to family, those types of things. So nailing down that number in a projection is very difficult. So just so you're aware. And also, you have a unique situation where you renew March 1. So you have old premiums rates for 2 months and the new premium for 10 months. So on number 3, I was asked what the monthly and annual premium for the 4 options and how many participate in each option. So that's all documented there for you. And again, your difference, if you did the math, I'm always one that likes to double check the math, makes the accounting background. Make sure it cross checks. It won't, because again, this isn't all of you have vacancies that aren't in here. So the number 4, the increase proposed for 2022 is an 8% increase for the total cost of premiums and the stop loss coverage, and that equals $78,580. Number 5, I was asked what is the total annual budgeted payroll salaries only, and that's the response there. And then Commissioner Thompson suggested that the police vehicle be moved to Murph. We've made that adjustment. I've suggested that the vehicle be fully reviewed and start doing maintenance reports to the commission, that when a request for a vehicle comes in, that they're provided with a summary of the last year to 2 years of maintenance required on the vehicle, so that you have some guidance just in the cost. And moving it to Murph allows you guys next year, when that vehicle comes up, you can say, no, I don't want to replace that. It's over in Murph. You're not going to lose that money into your cash balance. So it stays in Murph for a vehicle the next year, or if another one, shoots out. So it just makes it so you don't have to keep budgeting every year out of the general fund if you don't fill it. Don't buy the vehicle. I do recommend, though, that, or I do believe that I think we're going to need to replace that one. But that as it may, that's for next year. And then total proposed ad valorem tax from each fund, that's outlined. And then number 8, explain the difference between the 2021 and the 2021 revised budget. Okay, this is kind of hard to explain because it could be a million different things. But some of the more common issues that cause that difference is the addition of your partial inspector for this year. That changed it. Revenues come in and over, or under original budget projections. You've got 5 solid months of projections, so you can make some changes in revenues based on those numbers coming in. Final assessed valuation number may have changed. That's going to change your revenue projections. Your emergency issues, your weather event, that wasn't anything you guys budgeted, I imagine, for at all. So that changes the 2021 budget to revised budget. Incentives that were unplanned but approved because you didn't have any idea this company was coming in, and they came in and you made your adjustments. I'm an example. You didn't plan on having to hire an interim city manager. So things like that are what causes the difference between the 21 budget and the revised budget. And again, that revised budget will change before next year when you see the actuals. So it's literally an educated guess. So the next issue is the revenue neutral rate. And I was asked to kind of put together some pros and cons. I'm pretty hard to put together pros on it, but I'll try. I am old school, and I don't think one government entity should tell another government entity how to do their work when they're very comparable work. The revenue neutral rate was created by the legislature because of complaints about property taxes skyrocketing out of control. The legislature's belief was that the valuation growth should be utilized to lower the mill levy, and the transparency needs to be improved because people do not understand the impact of budgeting on their individual property taxes and therefore do not attend public hearings. So I was asked to prepare the list, and so I've listed in your pros that growth in valuation results in less taxes paid by citizens. That's great if you can do it. 2 is the transparency does go to their home. It takes the citizen's obligation to pay attention away, and it's delivered to their home. Now, this year, we found out today, it is not delivered to the home. It is a summary that's published in the paper. So it's only what each entity is doing with, are you complying with revenue neutral? If not, what's your mill levy? Just those 2 numbers. So I didn't realize that. I thought that was the big purpose of the whole legislation, but they're not doing it. So
Well, it doesn't start till next year,
Right.
22 and 23.
when you do 22, 23 budget.
Yeah.
And then the cons, if a commission complies, the city is left with declining revenue and are unable to support physical expansion of community or growth in prices that governments are also paying for goods and services. These are just risks. Fees and rates may become volatile due to the necessity of additional revenues to compensate for the loss of the ad valorem tax. The next thing, the state government will come in and say, now you can't take and fund transfers out of electric or out of water because you're using too much. Well, you had to supplement your services and your programming with those funds because you don't have the ad valorem now. So that leads right into eventually services or programs may need to be cut when fees and rates become excessive. So I would speculate that it can impact the rates for GOs, because GO bonds, as you're all familiar, are used to do streets or used to do different common governmental obligations. And when your reliance on the ad valorem tax is what GO bonds are based on. So if this commission can issue a GO bond and the next commission can comply with the R&R, what the bond buyers were basing their revenue on is no longer going to be accurate, because it's no longer a growing ad valorem number or steady ad valorem number, it's a declining ad valorem number. That's just my speculation, but I'm not sure how it wouldn't impact it. The cash basis law, again, I think comes into play, but sometimes the state just says, well, not when we put the rule in. And the cash basis law is just like what I talked about on the GO bonds. One commission can't bind the next one to something, and this would. So I'm going to guess that they would say that, well, it won't bind them because the next one can sit there and throw out the letters to everybody and just say, we're going to ignore it from now on. That's somewhat the reason why you have the cash basis law, is so that one commission can't get voted out and come in December and say, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and obligate the commission that just got elected in. That's some of why you have a cash basis law. So those are pros and cons. Just my humble, old school opinion. But I also understand why commissions sometimes will have to comply. It's a political and feel like that's the right thing. Unfortunately, doing the right thing, if you can afford to, with the mill levy, lowering it because you got a chance this year to lower it down, makes you lower it every year after that too. So that's the problem with the way this legislation is written. And that's just, again, my opinion. I was asked to explain the PD and the electric lineman pay increases. PD's increase was based on the study completed by Chief Hayes and previously supported by the commission. And the lineman pay is based off a 4-year program that was established and approved by the commission in 2018 in coordination with the Kansas Workforce One programs. The program allows pay increases for linemen as their knowledge and education goals are met. The program also commits to give the linemen the same raise as everyone else and $1 increase per hour every 6 months as they achieve those outlined goals. This is to help you recruit and retain linemen. And the way I understand it, some of the education materials and such were originally funded in 2018 by Workforce One, so you're kind of committed into that one. Number 11, I don't have a great answer on this, so I'm going to apologize now, but I was trying to get this done, didn't get a hold of Jaleesa. But I know that the funds are being utilized for staff, utilities, programming, and incentives. So I will visit with Jaleesa. She's actually going to be on your agenda Monday, so I'll ask her to give us an update. Okay.
When you talk about numbers, numbers are, we allocated what, 90,000 to him? You know, is that what you're
How
talking?
that 92 is being spent.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Number 12, the need to fill the building official position, that's a result of the fire merger. When you lost your, or will be losing, your building official that has the certifications and such, it's hard for a growing community, especially with the growth you guys have, to go without one. I would hope, but I'm not confident, but I would hope we could maybe find somebody that would agree to 30 hours instead of 40. I'm just not confident that we're going to find somebody like that. Usually those people are people that have been on and they're close to retirement, so they cut back, not just coming on. So, but it's still something we can try.
How many hours do you think it takes a week, as Brian ever said, or, actually,
I tried to back it into, his rate, take the 12,000 Weaver, and he said that won't work. I put way more hours than that
Did
into
he
it.
have like a,
He did, and I don't have it
I mean,
with
he's
me.
doing both, so it's not.
I think he
like
said-
full-time, right?
Was an 82 or 84 hours or something.
I've got it
Can't-
written down.
5 hours
How much?
65, if that is what he said.
Every 2 weeks?
I think he gave Sharice a different number.
Remember, I still remember the time frame.
Yeah, I've got it written
Yeah.
down in my
You can
office. So
check.
when we talk about it some more, we'll
I guess
go
just,
over it.
I guess the thought is there enough work for a full-time? I mean, are they gonna be busy enough full-time for 40 hours if that's what it takes to get someone to fill it? And if not, is there anything else that they could be utilized for in
Oh, yeah.
any department that could help out? I guess it's just the thought.
Actually, your code enforcement officer offered to work in other departments to make the budget work, but you're still paying,
I
so.
imagine there's times where it's busier and where it's not, winter or whatever, and where there's not as much happening.
Well, you tend to change goals. Summer is primarily your weeds and those kinds of things. And during the winter, you're focused more on the physical maintenance of the homes and stuff, and things like that, so. So that it is, I don't disagree, it is a year-round project, for both code enforcement and the building official. And anymore, our guys, they spend so much time training, being constantly updated on codes and getting their new certification. Our goal was that they had to have all of their certifications for all of the codes. And that takes a long time to get, and a lot of study time that you're paying for. So, okay, and then I had a question raised about where'd the budget for the building demo go to. It's still there. It's just merged into a line item with other items. So it's on page 22 in your budget book. Line item 2140 for professional services. It's 40,000 of that is what's included for demo.
What was the page number again? Sorry.
22.
22. And then it's further described back in on page 24 under the more lengthy description of 2140 line item. Since we do not currently have a plan for these funds, and they fall to the cash balance at the end of the year, like general fund items do, if you don't use it, I was asked, which was a great idea, if you could move it to the home rehab fund. But that's also in that same line item. And if you don't use it, you lose it. What I've asked Mary to do is check to see if that's a program, if you guys are interested in establishing a reserve. We're just not sure that you're allowed to do that by the state requirements. But if you do, that'd be an excellent program for you guys to build up a reserve so that if one year you only have one, but the next year you have 6, you're getting them instead of just 1 or 2 a year. So that's just, it's still in there though. It just has not been used this year. Okay, does anybody have any questions over all of that information I shared with you?
Just on the revenue neutral deal on the cash basis deal, can you, so if you adhere and comply to it, but you can't the next year, if they decide next year, like, we can't meet, it's too much of a stretch, or 2 years down the road, you aren't locked in. But it sounds like you're kind of saying we're going to be locked in for several years if we,
Well,
I just want to make sure I understand.
unless that commission votes out of it, you are. It keeps rolling over
Right.
and multiplying.
So 2 years down the road, if they said we can't meet it, we're out, then, I mean, we're not going to comply. They go through the same process we'd have to this year. I mean, it's no,
No, it'll be different then.
so explain the,
Each parcel will get a letter saying exactly the dollar amount that's the revenue neutral based off of your the previous year's decision,
Mhm.
and then what they're proposing. So you'll have the revenue neutral rate and the proposed ad valorem rate would show up on the letter.
So other than just the paperwork side of it and process of going through it, they're still free to make, aren't locked into the, the long-term schedule that gets sent out, that, how it
Right,
works
it just
against us. They
really
can-
puts them in a
At any
corner.
point in year 2 or 3, it said, nope, we're out, we'll file this way, and
Yeah.
and you go on, right?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure I understood that.
Nope, you're absolutely right. It just paints them into a corner that they have to go through that process.
Yeah.
So, and that's what this one page shows. What I did here on this spreadsheet was showed that if you took your historical mill levy and your valuation and you cut by what the state's saying, you need to cut this much to comply. It impacts, it rolls over the next year, you gotta cut that too again. And so it builds up so much that it becomes incredibly difficult. It's almost, you'll eventually get to zero ad valorem. But, like I said, the practicality of that, but the politics of it looks great. But the practicality of it to manage becomes impossible. So that's what I was trying to show you with how this works. So I used your historical mill levy and your valuation and ran it through from 2017 with the same, just, you're going to comply. Doesn't matter what you have on the table that needs to be done, you're going to comply with the revenue neutral legislation. By the time you get down to 2022, which is from 2017 to 2022, isn't very long, 5 years, you got to cut $259,000 out of your budget. And that's where I think it puts future commissions in difficult issues. So the next chart is if it was applied to average projected future expenditures. So didn't like that I went backwards and used actual, so I tried to kind of figure out what your average increase in valuation and average increase in expenditures were. So I based the expenditures off of a 3.1% increase was what you average in increases. That puts you at, after 5 years, you got to cut $332,000.
So in that 6 years, we'd had to cut $1 million off the budget.
Yes.
Okay, we're starting with 2022.
Yeah.
That's
Right, yeah, you would cut,
Yeah, it's a fairly small amount.
But you would have to cut $1 million total on that sixth year. It'd be $1 million difference in your budget that you had.
Yes. And then you go down to the last one and, oh, that was the last one. What did we do different on that one?
That was if you did the R&R, right?
Oh, yeah, if you only did it 1 year and then went back and said, okay, I'm not doing it in the future. It still changes your R&R amount every single year. So, does that make sense? That it's, none of them, year to year, you don't ever have to comply.
You don't go back up unless you go through the process to,
Right.
raise taxes or raise.
Yeah.
But every year, we'll have to vote on compliant or not compliant.
Well, yeah, you have to,
Yeah.
and there's a certain time frame in which you have to allow, the
So,
county clerk to go
Yeah.
through a process, just, look, we're going through a
Right.
process right now, period.
so what, we haven't done it. What's the process to get to year 2 or 3? Nope, mill's too, was not enough, we gotta raise taxes, the process then to go through that.
If you get down to year 2 or 3, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, but you go through the same process you're going through. You notify for an R&R hearing, and your budget hearing. You go through the process, you notify the county you're not complying. The county sends out a letter to each parcel saying what each entity, if they're going outside of the R&R, what their mill levy is and what the impact difference would be.
So the difference is basically they get an individual instead of just in the paper?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They have to do that by June 15th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not this year.
No, starting in
Yeah.
22, so, so you will have, the county clerk will actually calculate the revenue neutral
Mhm.
for each
She
tax
has to have it to us.
subdivision.
Yeah, she has to have it to us by
The rate for the city will be included on the notice of the assessed valuation according to Senate Bill 13.
Yeah. So that's what you're a growing community, your valuation is going up. And the legislature, in my opinion, looked at it as only that the homes that you have in existence are the only thing going up. You know, if they would have allowed you the opportunity to benefit from the growth, it would be a totally different thing. Because the growth costs you money. Often, they've got to expand utilities, they've got to expand water, you got to expand streets. And streets are GOs. You don't have tolls on your streets. And so, how are you going to afford to do streets when the growth that you took from your valuation now goes to pay back, gets redistributed back to the community? That's the part I don't understand if they would have made that exception, it's a livable document. But they didn't.
This is a
They lumped it all together.
county falling under the same exact deal?
County and the school district all do.
So everyone's under the same
Mm-hmm.
boat, in the same boat as far as
That's why you saw a lot of entities jump their mill levy way up a few years ago. Because now they can work
backwards. And
backwards. And that defeats the purpose. I mean, it was
the kid show coming or going.
business-wise, it's what you had to do, but so
Is there still some unknowns out there as how it's going to really play out though, as far as, anything, because the first time it's running, it's being rolled out.
yeah. The unknowns, in my opinion, are simply the one with the unknown valuation amount. So, and we'll talk about that here in a
It's
few minutes.
if you miss it and you have to,
Yeah.
and if you aren't complying, you have
Yeah.
to pay back and rebate
Yeah.
it all.
Then you're in a mess.
Yep. So you may comply, and if that's you guys' choice to do that, we still suggest you go through the R&R hearing. Because if you miss, you're in trouble.
Oh, sure.
So,
Mhm.
so I know there was a movement after we left the meeting the other night to reconsider the flat budget, the flat mill levy. I'm an old war horse. I'm sticking with my recommendation. So I've also had people say, well, let's just do it this year because the legislature will change it. And you and I talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I know, speculating.
Throwing out.
When there's only 2 no votes, they're not going to change it. Because this is a political coup for them that impacts them dollar-wise, nada. Only impacts you guys. And it makes them look like the heroes to the state, to taxpayers, because they made those darn cities and school districts and counties comply. So that's where I get really testy and really grouchy and remember why I retired.
Samantha,
I know
your heels
she's
there.
going, "Mom, Mom."
Slow down.
So, number 2, having stated my recommendation, if you choose to comply, we did go back and do some more research. And remember, we talked about doing $42,389 was your R&R amount. We said we'll bump it to 50 so you don't have to worry. Everybody's saying, the state is saying, go to the 42,389.
Exact.
Yeah. And that way, you've already done your R&R hearing. If it does go over, it doesn't matter. And you didn't cut 8,000 more that you didn't need to cut to comply. So that would be the recommendation, to stick to that 42,389 number. And then if the commission determines that they should cut the 42,389 on this page, I've taken the liberty, I know you didn't ask me to, but I've taken the liberty to kind of lay out the preferred options for consideration. So, and I know you won't like this one, but I want you to hear me out. Cut 1% from the budgeted 8% health insurance premiums. But direct staff to reduce the increase in the premium from 8 to 5. So you're budgeting the 8, but reduce what is the plan actually looks like to a 5%. Does that make sense?
What's dollar wise? What's that?
1% is $9,800. So it's fairly negligible. But by doing that and leaving that little bit of a gap, that 2% gap, it gives you the opportunity in this year that you're going to ask for substantial changes in a plan to do things like we did in Dodge. We set up a health savings account. And that health savings account, if you end up, and I'm not saying you will because I don't want to get people in a stir, but if you end up going to a high deductible health plan, that health savings account is established by the city for the employee, and you can put $250 in it for a single and $500 for a family. And then we required them to match it. We weren't going to do it if you didn't participate. Well, that gave them just a little bit of security that if I got hit that very first year, I had a little bit backed up for that high deductible. If you choose not to do it, it's still sitting there. It's not being spent on the plan. The plan's reduced to the 5% level, but it gives you just a little bit of wiggle room to do some creative things.
Does that move the needle on to get into the revenue neutral?
Yep.
Then? Okay.
As we go down.
Okay.
And then the B is to move the salary survey to 2021 and fund that through vacancies. So that takes, now you're down to 19,822. And then on C, we had, and Park Department will never like this, so I'll be the bad guy coming in. We had a method that when you had the utility funds that had just a little bit more to work with in their municipal equipment reserve, but because Park is under the general fund, they never had as much money for equipment. Those guys are able to trade out vehicles a little easier. Well, don't trade it. Send it down to Park. Park gets a relatively new vehicle, and the utilities department is on the schedule that they keep on. You just don't trade it. So that replaces the Park vehicle. So you can take the $10,000 out of the budget that you had budgeted to set in the reserve for that. So that brings us up to $29,000. Remove the cemetery land. Kick it down the road. That sounds really bad when you're talking about the cemetery. But kick it down the road one more year and look for an opportunity to include it into your GO bonds for street projects or some kind of project that you have, and then finance it. Interest rates are so low right now that that would be a method that I would consider. So that brings us to $39,822. Then my last one was, and I just rounded it off to get us to $42,389. Either cut approximately 0.25% additional from the health insurance, or go to reduce the donations further, because there were some that weren't touched. We cut several of them quite a bit, but we didn't cut all of them. So those are options that get you to the 42,389 level. And then there was, again, we talked about it earlier, the recommendation to take the police car out. We don't recommend that one, if you can avoid it. Obviously, it's on the table. You guys can do as you choose, but that would be our last option. So the last few things are just some of the information that we've had for quite a while. And I know Mary's already got the report from, or the resolution. Do you have it started yet, or you have it from the league?
I have a sample that I
Yeah.
got from Ashley. Ashley sent me.
Oh, Ashley had it.
Yeah.
So, this is the thing that you have to say, okay, we intend to exceed the revenue neutral, even though you're complying, if you drop it down, just in case you have that difference. So you still need to do the revenue neutral rate. So either way, you're doing this, and is our recommendation. And then the last one is just so you kind of have an idea of what all happens. Most all of this happens on the same day, so, but it's just for you to have. We talked to Colby. Colby is complying, even though they had a decline in their valuation. Scott City is not complying. They have some circumstances that they feel like they can't, so they're gonna do the revenue neutral, and they're actually raising their mill levy.
So when did you talk to Brad? What time did you talk to him?
This afternoon he called.
See, I talked to Brad, and he told me that they had a change, that he was going to recommend that they do the revenue neutral.
They're doing the revenue neutral hearing
Yeah,
because they're not complying with the revenue neutral rate.
I misunderstood him, because I think,
Yeah,
he,
because I was surprised when he said they were raising the mill levy.
mm,
And the only way you raise the mill levy is you gotta do the revenue neutral rate. So. Questions, comments, direction. We really need you guys to give us direction because there is a lot to get ready for Monday.
This was really helpful. You presented that last night, or was it last 2 nights ago, whatever.
Yeah.
And that caused more of my questions than anything, because things stood out to me more than in the big book. I guess
Yeah.
it was just more condensed or whatever. But so I went away from Monday just my biggest hang was the revenue neutral or not, and just trying to understand it and wrap your mind around it, and
Right.
it's like a lose-lose situation. But what I kept coming back to is what was bothering me. Like we're like this close, just a few items that weren't that. I mean, in the scheme of things, expensive to get there, to get to the neutral. And so we're like this close. Why don't we just do it? And then going back and looking at your this guy here, it's like, okay, that's a big savings for the property taxes that everyone argues about and gets upset about, and I get that, and I thought about just taking you through my whole, as I'm mowing, process here, that then we had fees that we had to stick on people for the unfortunate incident with the with the cold weather, and at least $8, if not more, on everybody, times 12. That'd be a way to get some of that back for them. So that's what I just kept coming back to. It's like, we're this close. Why don't we just comply with it the first year and see how all this washes out, and see how it goes, and just we're compliant. We don't have to worry if we go through the meeting still. If we miss a little bit, we don't have to rebate all that and put ourselves out on a limb just to see how it goes. We're able to do it. We're funding everything else that I think that was presented. We're giving raises. Benefits are staying intact. Well, I mean, we aren't,
They're
what,
being reduced
Well-
3%,
the what?
3% to 5%, from
I mean, what-
8% to 5%.
I mean, what they're actually, what they have. I mean, the line item is, but we aren't, I mean, yes, they are getting reduced on that, but we don't know what the number is
Yeah.
gonna be.
Yeah,
But
you
I'm
don't know
saying-
what the plan will
I'm
look
saying
like.
for
you mean.
for the employees, I mean, it's all staying the same. And line item's different, but we aren't changing anything there for them.
You'll have to change their plan
Well,
to
that,
comply with the line item. Does that make sense? You won't have the deductibles you have now. You're gonna have to increase them.
well, that's for another day, but, when we get to that point, I mean, it depends on what the other options are, right?
No, you'll have to decrease because you didn't fund the option you have now. The 8% funded the option you have now. So that would be no changes to the plan. And by reducing to 5%, it's making you change the plan.
From 8 to 5 is how much?
42, no,
27,
um,
30.
yeah, 98, 22 times 3, whatever that is, 20. I can't do that math, almost 30,000,
something.
yeah.
If the rate stays the same.
If the plan stays the same, you have to pay that 30,000. If you reduce it, take off that 30,000, your plan will not be the same.
So what about the money that's been in reserve for self-funding?
It stays for self-funding. But that's only used for emergencies, like years that because you're self-funded, you budget for an amount that you expect to hit. And if you have 5 instead of 2 have really big claims, your stop loss kicks in and they cover this much. But that much on that many claims, you hit into your reserves. That's why you have your reserves.
So you could still, even if that's the case, depending on what the other options are, and we don't even know.
Right.
'Cause we don't have any numbers, 'cause
Yeah.
we can't do this all at the same time.
Right. I know.
So we're guessing, but even that case scenario, it's still, going to be where even if they kept down the road the grandfathered insurance, so it'd have to come from, payroll deductions to make up the difference then.
Right.
At a tune of, what was the number?
For them to pay the
Well,
employees to pay
if
the
we are
difference.
funding it enough,
Okay, if you dropped it to 5% and said, we're gonna leave the plan exactly the same, but employees are gonna pay the difference, it's that 30,000 is what employees will be paying.
they have to somehow come up with a way to,
Yeah. And that's why I highly recommend that you do the benefit committee and, work through. Employees may be willing to change from Blue Cross to something less and keep a similar type plan and get a lower premium. Or they may say, no, I'd rather pay the difference and stay with Blue Cross. It gives you some flexibility there, but so that commissions don't have to get drug into how a plan is designed, we always ask them to please give us a not to exceed. And then we change the plan. We were changing it every year. It may be things that the employees didn't see, but there were changes. And so it made it a little bit more stable. You guys didn't see such big jumps and changes. We kept they established an amount, and that's what they said, we weren't going to exceed that.
And you were recommending 5%.
Yeah, I did 5%. I just recommended 5%. That's what we did. Yeah.
I think if it's 30,000, that needs to be made up if you, depending on, you know, I don't wanna get, that's what whoever's doing it needs to do it and come with a recommendation. It's whether it's a portion or, you know, singles don't do nothing, the middle one pays a little bit and the other one pays, it's taking away a little bit from the raise, if they're choosing the higher option, I guess, as far as who's getting what, but,
Yeah, you're still, no matter what you do, you're still dropping down to 5% is all your funding. Except for, that's where I asked to use that 2%. I shouldn't say that's all your funding. The 2% would be for a one-time change for like the establishment of an HSA. It's not something that goes every single year.
Mhm.
It's a
And
one-time
that's to
thing.
build up
Yeah,
that fund.
yeah. No, the HSA.
Yeah.
So it's a one-time thing. Our commission did it for 3 years in a row, and then they quit. But that's one-time commitment would be all this is.
The health
Yeah.
savings account.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then that spreads you're still dropping your benefit down to the 5%, but you're given the flexibility a little bit with that HSA for a one-time. Does that make sense? I think we're talking the same,
Yeah.
or just
Yeah.
apples and oranges a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, I think.
Well, and they're matching the amount, as you said.
Yes, it would. That's the way we required it, and you only got that if you were a high deductible health plan. So if the employees came back and said, we would rather pay the difference and keep a low deductible health plan, that's just sitting there. It's in the reserve. You don't have to, next year, you could fund 2% less because you already had an additional 2 in there. So I know it's confusing, but you're getting to where you want to get to that reduction of the benefit, that you're making it the first year less painful with the high deductible health plan and putting a little bit into that. And then if they don't move to a high deductible health plan, the recommendation is they're just going to change the benefit to a different plan, but
I mean, we aren't
only have so
we aren't
much dollars.
deciding any of that right now, though.
no,
I mean, that's-
all you're deciding is
yeah,
what do
I
we
mean-
have to work within.
That's for another, yeah,
Yeah, all you're deciding is what you have to work within.
yeah.
That's why I think there was concern that if we didn't cut it all the way down to the 5%, that it stayed in the plan. It doesn't stay in the plan. So, just so we're 100% clear on that.
I think all my questions, I mean, been answered. I mean, I was worried, I need to further understand the revenue neutral stuff, and then not thrilled with having just what circumstances on the building inspector, how that turned out, you know, that having to, we need to fill it, but, then, we'll find out more on economic development. I'm good with the police vehicle and the raises there and the lineman deal. The other,
JD,
yes.
can I interrupt you
Yep.
just once?
Mhm.
Frankie doesn't know this yet. I don't recommend that you take that salary survey and implement it right away. If you do the salary survey, then you have that incorporated in at
To
the
guide
same
by,
time.
to be
Yeah,
guided by.
so it's done as a whole thing. So, but that's a dollar number to keep plugged in there. So just so everybody's clear.
Okay.
Sorry, Frankie, I forgot to tell you that.
So, can I have clarification for a minute? you're saying his proposals don't implement that.
Right, you have the money reserved,
Okay,
but you don't implement it until the salary survey verifies it.
okay, that's why I just wanted to make sure I had questions.
Because we're also doing, in this salary survey, is the benefits study that you and I talked about. I made sure that RFP reflects that the benefits are compared to.
So that'll have the whole broad picture. Now, let me ask you a question on the survey. I mean, I think we have good staff, and I think, you know, we deal contextually with the budget that we have in place. If that salary survey comes and says, wait, you're paying your employees too much. If I was a commissioner, I wouldn't say, hey, Neil or Dustin, I'm going to pay you less. Are you?
Well,
No.
you pay
Exactly,
for the job that they're
because-
doing because they're worth it.
Well, yes, exactly right, my point. So, but I get your point where it is, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we compensate them, you know, what they're worth. As I said, I'm not going to say, well, we're going to take your wages down, because, I mean, I would never,
We had that.
you know, yeah. Up there in
In
Dodge.
Dodge, we had that. We had some positions that it showed that they were overpaid compared to other areas. So they didn't like it, but they got to sit there at that rate until it caught up. I think we did like a 1% cost of living, but we took the other 2% that would have been budgeted and applied it to the others. So
So it's a guide, we use it at the hospital all the time, and
On that,
but I wouldn't want to ever constrain a city manager to hold to it. If you have, sometimes, I mean, I don't consider them the Bible, you know, as far as this is exact science. It's just a guide to use, and you get a
Right.
general feel. But if you got someone really good you want to go after, I want the city manager to have the freedom to get them. And if it's outside the parameters, it's out. And sometimes the surveys don't keep up with supply and demand. Sometimes it's hard to get
that's right.
some of these positions. You got to pay what you got to pay.
Yeah.
You might be outside of that, and that's just the way it is.
And we saw that so much with police, fire, you'll have it with utilities, that their wages are so competitive constantly that there's that shimmy. It never goes, it's always going this way.
Well, in the last year or two, you can't hardly even keep
You
up,
can't keep up.
just because it's just gone crazy. But
So we finally reached a point that we said, okay, we had the full total revamp of our pay and classification, job descriptions were redone, everything was looked at. And then we made the commitment that we were establishing a number in the cost of living index that we were going to commit to. Well, we did that, and we put it in every year, but what we failed to do was change the schedule by that cost of living. So when you change and do a cost of living, your whole scale goes up by that. Now, if you do 1%, let's say, it only goes up 1%. You may get 3% in raises, but the scale doesn't change. So what we found when we failed to do that, that the new guys, we got to the point again, we couldn't hire new people because we weren't raising that up with the cost of living. So after we did our second salary survey, we made the commitment that we were going to have a salary survey done about every 3 years. It's 3 to 5 years. I don't know what they kept to. But that way we made sure we were doing it right. We had a plan that prepared for police, fire, linemen that are so volatile in the marketplace. And we had a plan that we shouldn't have had to have seen those big 16% pay increases because we had been moving the cost of living. And it was just, we literally wrote it in that you have to give our HR staff a manual on how to implement the future changes. And we got it. So, and this lady still works with us every year. We call her, we tell her what we're doing. She goes, okay, this is what you need to do. Don't forget. And she'll say, no, I know that's what the game plan is, but that's not what we're seeing in the market. So be ready next time. So you kind of start positioning yourselves. So I highly recommend don't put a 10 and 20-year gap in between your next salary survey because it bites you.
And who would be doing the survey through the RFPs?
We'll do the RFP and solicit proposals.
Mhm. And I might make mention to the commission here, and you might chime in and everything in order for the employees, to feel comfortable that you would stay on and be a consultant on the RFP, right?
Yeah,
And see that through.
I
So,
really enjoy
That way,
that.
well, that way a new city manager comes in here and says, well, no, we need to do this, or he doesn't know what's going on. So in order for their benefit, you would stay on and say, hey, I'm going to consult this and see it through the end.
Because we've done it. And the process that we had, I was very proud of. I thought it worked very well for both the commission and for the employees. And ultimately, that reflected to the public.
What do you think?
That's a lot of work you guys put in. I appreciate the effort, and I mean I know it was my analyzing brain. I'm good with all of it. Not happy with it's just a typical deal. It's just the way it is. But I think I'm good with everything presented. But I do probably the only thing I differ with is I think for this first year to comply with the revenue neutral process and to see how it works out and just because it's the first year, and I think if there's a time to do it, you comply the first year and see how it rolls and going through the meeting process, and we're protected a little bit, and maybe next year they say no, this is no big deal. We can just we need to. This isn't working, or maybe it is. I don't know, but my gut just says, to stay compliant with it for this first go round, and but I'm good with everything else, I think.
Well, so just let me chime in here and say that on this side of the desk, we have the challenges of stabilizing everything for the municipality, the employees, all the benefits that come along with it. We also have the challenge of having to stabilize our constituents. And so it's kind of a juggling act, but at the end of the day, we're all in together. It's not a separation whether it's the county and the city and any other, the school district. We're all in it together. You've got 3 taxing entities, and we have to do, what balancedly fair. So, I talked to St. Francis, Atwood, Oakley, Garden City, and they're all chiming in on doing to do the exceed, revenue neutral. But then I had a phone conference with the league as well. And the top guy there, of course, maybe you know who is, Trey Cocky.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, said hi. But he recommends extremely hard that we do the revenue neutral for this reason. I think, right now we have approximated valuations, estimates.
Mhm.
But they're really not going to hit us until November, right? October or November. So that being said, he said, for no reason other than to avoid a situation where you accidentally exceed the revenue neutral rate because of fluctuation value there. And if you exceed that rate without going through the process, you're going to be in a heck of a mess with the county. And you don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Trust me, you don't want to be there. And so, for that reason alone, I believe, this thing is not going to hit until 2022. And another thing that I have to say as well is, according to Senate Bill 12, is that the actual cost will be reimbursed to the county through the state when they comply, when they need to. So there will actually be no expense there. So I did my research.
I know.
So,
I'll add to that.
but anyway, so, and that, it takes place, but still, the future commission would have to say, hey, this isn't, going to work. I made a statement that at the last budget meeting, we would have been in a mess if we hadn't had a second meeting, because we wouldn't have had all this information. And thanks to staff that you brought it all. But I would always support never to cut staff. Don't cut services. But I recommend to the commission that the thing that you have to buy is the purchasing, of equipment. That's where you have to watch. Now, you might chime in. Dot City did it on a depreciation schedule, what we do with Murph and Surf, right?
Right.
You might explain that.
Well, what we did, and it was never perfect, but we tried to schedule, we had every vehicle laid out on a depreciation schedule, we had every building, we had every big piece of equipment that qualified for MRF literally on a schedule. And that was spread out, so you could literally put money back in savings, and then that was spread out through the departments by a percentage and put into the budget, so you were putting your money aside. Now, that was also the easiest place to not fund.
Mhm.
So, just so, it worked well when you could fund it. It just, when you have situations like this, you'll get to where you can't fund it.
And that's what we call,
Yeah.
that's, we have Murph and Surf.
Yeah,
And you
same
call it
thing.
something, yeah.
Yeah, we called it CIP, Capital Improvement Program, and MRF. We still use MRF. I knew that acronym when I got here. But one thing I want to comment about your statement that the state will reimburse you. Do you know how many things the state said they'd reimburse you and then they quit the very first year or never even do it? I mean, it's a ton. The property taxes jumped. I don't know how many, you were probably on the commission then, probably in the late 90s. Cities had to jump their property taxes because the state quit revenue sharing. And they were always going to put it back in, but they needed it for their budget. So they took
That
it.
was the same as demand transfers?
Yeah,
Demand transfers.
similar. But they did the same thing with the demand
Yeah.
transfers. What makes them look politically good?
Yeah.
So let me make sure I'm understanding both of you. We're complying with the revenue neutral rate, but we're still going to say, as we're recommending, that you still do the hearing.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
want to make sure.
Oh, that has to be done before you pass a resolution anyway.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you weren't wanting to stay flat and have the revenue neutral hearing.
No.
You can do it either way.
No.
But we're saying comply with the revenue neutral rate, or you two are saying comply with the net revenue neutral rate and have the hearing.
That's the protection though, if you have
Yeah.
the hearing for later,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
as a
that's
safety
exactly
net,
right.
kind of.
What we're discussing right now is just basically to convey to Ashley what we're going to do.
Yeah,
Because we
for
have to by the
Monday.
20th.
Well, Monday, we've got to make a bunch of changes.
Yeah, that's
for
what I'm
the
saying,
meeting.
everything has to be, and that's why we needed to have this.
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, this is just talking about to comply or not to comply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm opposite, I'm not in favor of complying. I mean, it's been recommended to us, and there's a lot of numbers and everything to go through, but I still, after looking at everything, that's what I would recommend to do too, is not comply.
And have the hearing.
And have the hearing.
But you're saying make the cuts, have the hearing, make the cuts, have the hearing, make the cuts and have the hearing?
Well, he's saying not
Don't
to,
have the
com-
cuts.
he doesn't want to comply with
The revenue neutral.
revenue neutral.
So you're saying
We
don't
don't.
cut and have the hearing.
We
Okay.
But my only question, before, well, go ahead, Gary.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
we should not say no to it, and the revenue neutral.
You need to comply with it.
Yeah.
I probably need a vote.
Oh,
I need you to
yeah,
have action,
sure.
so.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a hard motion.
Yeah, well, the only thing that I would say that from the expert standpoint, you are putting the municipality in one heck of a position. Correct, show those valuations, because you don't have a clue, because we don't get them till late October or November. So you're gonna have to come up with a lot of money, because the county's gonna force you to. And that's the only key of the puzzle that you're gonna have to be prepared to answer to the taxpayers. You know, and that's why it makes it difficult. I mean, I understand, the other flip side to it, but I just wanted to make that. Well, with that being said, I will entertain a motion, by whoever wants to make it, to comply with the revenue neutral rate.
How much, what all did you want?
I'll help you.
To cover everything.
Let me go ahead and clarify, because I think I see where the three are going. But we need to decide on the recommendations. How do you want to make those cuts? Do you want to follow what staff recommended on A, B, C, D, E?
The 49,000 that you're talking about.
Yeah, 42.
42.
Yeah, 42,980 or something.
I'm good with all the recommendations that you made.
You want to do it with that, okay. So the last question then is on E. I asked to do, it's a rounding. Do you want to take that last bit, that 2567 from reducing donations, the ones that hadn't been touched, or take an additional 0.25% from the health insurance? We cut half, wasn't it half? I think on most of the donations, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot on the donations.
Yeah. It's a pretty small amount, but that's just the last piece that we need
So-
direction.
From the donations. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, I would agree. I would even touch the corporate thing,
Okay.
the health insurance for the guys. I would just do it from the
So
donations.
let me try to formulate a motion for you,
Yeah, sure.
and then you can go, that works.
Yeah, sure.
Or not. Direct staff to prepare the budget, 2022 budget document to comply with the revenue neutral rate, which will result in a $42,389 reduction in the budget as presented, but go forward with a revenue neutral hearing even though we are in compliance. And use the cuts to achieve the $42,389 as recommended
For how
through
much?
the
Yeah,
$42,389,000 as recommended in A, B, C, D, and E of staff's recommendations, with E being clarified, being cut through donations. That's the world's longest.
That's the motion you wanna make, JD.
I have a question, in that motion, do we want to include the day of the hearing, because remember we can't have it in our next meeting in August, or is that a later issue?
Yeah, I think that's a later issue because that you'll do Monday.
Okay.
But just for clarification, we will need to do it on the second meeting in August, right? No, we have to do it after the second,
20.
yeah.
Right.
So we'll have a special meeting. And I'll try to do it before I'm gone.
Okay, yeah,
So just for the consistency for you guys,
yeah, that will work.
so.
You okay with that motion? JD?
42,389.
Mhm.
Let's give it a shot.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor,
But I
but
need to repeat it just to. You
I
got
don't
it.
think so. Do you want him to repeat it?
I got it.
Yeah.
We have to worry.
We've actually gotten commented by somebody that we need to repeat the motions and not just say so moved to maybe.
You want me to do it again?
Would you like me to say what I wrote?
No, if you're good with it, I'm good with it, I'm just. I attempted to.
Yeah, it's a complicated one, so.
Direct staff to prepare the 2022 budget document to comply with R&R, which results in a $42,389 reduction as presented, that go forward with the R&R hearing. And even though complying with R&R, use the cut of 42,389 as directed in staff recommendations A through E with E being donated.
yes,
Yes.
That's my motion.
all right. Have a
It was an
motion
excellent one.
on the floor, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Commissioner Ferris. Any questions or concerns? Mary, read the roll.
Brumbault,
Yes.
Thompson, Howard,
No.
Ferris,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Okay, Sharice, anything else that you want to address tonight or
God, I
talk
hope not.
about? Okay, well, with that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion we adjourn.
Got a motion by Commissioner Ferris,
Second.
second by Commissioner Brumbaugh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.